The sound of champagne glasses clinking echoed through the grand ballroom of the Eco Hotel in Lagos as Adunni Bakare stepped through the golden doors. Her 3 children flanked beside her like young royalty. The billionaire tech mogul Kwame Asante's arm rested protectively around her waist, his diamond-encrusted watch catching the light as photographers rushed to capture the moment. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Across the room, Dele Adebayo nearly choked on his wine. The man who had publicly humiliated his ex-wife 10 years ago for being barren now watched in stunned silence as she glided past him like a queen. Her emerald green Geli head wrap was perfectly tied, complementing her flowing Ankara gown that screamed success and confidence. Impossible, Dele whispered to his current wife Funmi, whose own face had gone pale. Those children, they look exactly like her. Adunni had been 25 when she married Dele in what was supposed to be Lagos' wedding of the year. The Adebayo family owned one of Nigeria's largest oil companies, and everyone expected their union to produce the next generation of business heirs. But after 3 years of trying, the doctors delivered devastating news. Adunni had blocked fallopian tubes, making natural conception nearly impossible. The diagnosis had crushed her spirit, but what destroyed her soul was Dele's reaction. Instead of standing by her side, he began staying out late, claiming business meetings while rumors swirled about his affairs. The final blow came during their 4th wedding anniversary party, when his mother stood up in front of 200 guests and announced that Dele would be taking a second wife to ensure the family bloodline continues. A woman who cannot give her husband children is not a complete woman, the elder Mrs. Adebayo had declared, while Adunni sat frozen in humiliation. Dele hadn't even defended her. He had simply nodded and raised his glass in agreement. That night, Adunni packed a single suitcase and left everything behind. The mansion in Ikoyi, the luxury cars, her jewelry, even her wedding photos. With nothing but her university degree in business administration and a fierce determination to rebuild, she boarded a plane to London, vowing never to return until she could prove them all wrong. Now, 10 years later, she was back. As she moved through the crowd at Dele's annual charity gala, the same event where his mother had once shamed her, Adunni felt every eye in the room following her. Her eldest daughter, 8-year-old Kemi, looked stunning in a miniature version of her mother's outfit, while her 6-year-old twin boys, Tund and Deji, wore matching Agbada outfits that made them look like young princes. "Mummy, why is that man staring at us?" Kemi whispered, her intelligent eyes fixed on Dele. "That's nobody important, darling," Adunni replied, her voice carrying just enough volume for nearby guests to hear. "Just someone from Mummy's past who made the mistake of underestimating what God can do." Kwame squeezed her hand reassuringly. At 45, the Ghanaian tech entrepreneur was worth over $2 billion, his software company revolutionizing banking across Africa. More importantly, he worshipped the ground Adunni walked on and treated her children as his own. "You ready for this?" he murmured in her ear, his deep voice sending shivers down her spine. Adunni nodded, her heart pounding as she spotted Dele's mother across the room. The older woman's mouth hung open in shock, her usually imperious demeanor cracking as she processed the impossible sight before her. But the evening's biggest surprise was yet to come. As the crowd gathered for the charity auction's main event, Kwame stepped to the microphone, his commanding presence filling the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement that will change everything you thought you knew about love, family, and second chances." Dele's face drained of all color as realization began to dawn. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The auction hall fell silent as Kwame's voice boomed through the microphone. Adunni watched her ex-husband's face contort with a mixture of confusion and growing dread, his hand gripping his wine glass so tightly she thought it might shatter. 10 years ago, a remarkable woman was told she could never have children, Kwame continued, his eyes finding Adunni's across the crowd. She was abandoned by those who should have supported her, cast aside like yesterday's newspaper. But God had different plans. Funmi, Dele's current wife, grabbed his arm. "What is he talking about?" she hissed, but Deli couldn't form words. His mind was racing back to that terrible night when he'd chosen his family's expectations over his wife's heartbreak. That woman didn't just prove the doctors wrong. Kwame's voice rose with emotion. She proved that strength, determination, and faith can overcome any obstacle. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to introduce my fiancé, Adunni, and her 3 beautiful children. The crowd erupted in applause, but Adunni barely heard it. She was watching Deli's mother, Mama Adebayo, whose face had gone from shock to something resembling panic. The older woman was whispering urgently to her son, but Deli seemed frozen in place. Young Kemi tugged at her mother's gown. "Mummy, why does that old woman look angry?" "Sometimes, sweetheart, people get upset when they realize they were wrong about something very important," Adunni replied, her voice steady despite the emotional storm brewing inside her. As the formal presentations continued, Adunni's mind drifted back to those dark months in London. The fertility treatments had been experimental and expensive, draining her savings while she worked 3 jobs to survive. Dr. Sarah Okafor, a Nigerian British specialist, had warned her that the procedure might not work, but Adunni had been desperate to prove that she wasn't the failure everyone believed her to be. The miracle came 2 years after leaving Lagos. First one positive pregnancy test, then the ultrasound that revealed twins. When Kemi was born 18 months later, naturally and without assistance, Adunni knew God had been preparing her for something greater than she'd ever imagined. Building her consulting firm from nothing had been another battle entirely. Working from her tiny flat in East London, she'd started by helping small African businesses navigate international markets. Her big break came when she connected a Kenyan coffee producer with a major British retailer, earning her first 6-figure commission. "Mummy always says we were her miracle babies," Tund whispered to his twin brother, loud enough for several nearby guests to hear. "She says God made us extra special because we took so long to get here." The innocent comment hit Deli like a physical blow. His own marriage to Funmi had produced 2 children, but their relationship was built on convenience rather than love. Funmi had been chosen by his mother specifically because she came from another wealthy family and had proven fertility. She'd already had a daughter from a previous relationship. Across the room, Mama Adebayo was having her own crisis. The woman she'd once dismissed as worthless had returned as the companion of one of Africa's wealthiest men, with 3 beautiful children who bore an unmistakable resemblance to her former daughter-in-law. "We need to leave," Mama Adebayo hissed to Deli. "This is a setup. She's trying to embarrass our family." But Deli couldn't move. He was transfixed by the sight of the woman he'd once loved, now radiant with confidence and success. The broken girl who'd left Lagos in shame had returned as a queen, and he'd never felt smaller in his life. The evening's entertainment continued, but tension crackled through the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. Other guests had begun to piece together the drama unfolding before them, whispers spreading like wildfire through the crowd. Then Kwame made another announcement that sent shockwaves through the room. "I'm also pleased to announce that Asani Technologies will be establishing our West African headquarters right here in Lagos, with an initial investment of $500 million. The crowd gasped. This wasn't just a social event anymore. It was a business declaration that would reshape Nigeria's tech landscape. But as the applause died down, Kwame's next words cut through the celebration like a knife. "However, I want everyone to know that this investment comes with one non-negotiable condition." His eyes locked directly onto Deli's across the crowded room. Stay tuned to see what explosive condition Kwame reveals. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the drama. Deli felt the blood drain from his face as Kwame's penetrating gaze held him captive across the glittering ballroom. The tech billionaire's next words would either make or destroy him, and everyone in Lagos high society was watching. "The condition is simple," Kwame announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Any business partnerships or contracts involving Asani Technologies will be based purely on merit, integrity, and how companies treat their employees and families. We believe a man's character is reflected in how he handles his most personal relationships." The message was clear to anyone who knew the history between Delhi and Adunni. This wasn't just a business announcement. It was a declaration of war. Mama Adebayo's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the panic spreading across her weathered features. The Adebayo oil empire had been courting international tech partnerships for months, and Kwame's company represented billions in potential revenue. Now, her son's past mistakes threatened to cost them everything. "We have to fix this," she whispered urgently to Delhi, her decorated fingers digging into his arm. "Whatever it takes, you need to make this right with that girl." But Adunni was no longer a girl. As she moved gracefully through the crowd, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about her remarkable transformation, she radiated the confidence of a woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. Her children stayed close, their natural charm winning over even the most skeptical society matrons. Mrs. Becker called out Otunba Williams, one of Lagos' most influential businessmen. "I heard you're planning to establish operations here in Nigeria. What sectors are you targeting?" Adunni's smile was razor-sharp. "Sustainable agriculture and women's empowerment microfinance. I've learned that the most overlooked opportunities often yield the highest returns." The subtle jab wasn't lost on anyone who understood her story. She'd been overlooked, dismissed, and discarded, only to become more valuable than those who'd rejected her. Across the room, Funmi was having her own moment of reckoning. She'd married Delhi knowing about his first wife, but she believed the family narrative that Adunni had been weak and inadequate. Now, faced with the obvious success and happiness of her husband's ex-wife, Funmi felt her own insecurities rising to the surface. "She's beautiful," Funmi murmured, unable to keep the envy from her voice. "And those children, they look so confident, so loved." Delhi flinched. His children with Funmi were polite but distant, raised primarily by nannies while their parents focused on maintaining their social status. The genuine affection between Adunni and her kids was a painful reminder of what authentic family looked like. As the evening progressed, more details of Adunni's success story emerged through casual conversations. She'd built a consulting empire worth £50 million, owned properties in London, Accra, and now Lagos, and had been featured on the cover of African Business magazine as one of the continent's most influential diaspora entrepreneurs. But the most shocking revelation came when 8-year-old Kemi approached a group of women discussing the evening's drama. "My mummy says forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," the little girl announced with startling maturity. "She says some people have to learn that actions have consequences." The women exchanged meaningful glances. This wasn't just about business success. Adunni had returned with a plan. That plan began to unfold when Kwame approached Delhi directly, his massive frame and quiet intensity making the oil executive shrink visibly. "Delhi Adebayo," Kwame said, his voice deceptively casual. "I believe you know my fiancé." "Kwame, please," Delhi stammered, glancing around nervously. "What happened between Adunni and me was a long time ago. We were young, we made mistakes." "Mistakes?" Kwame's eyebrow arched dangerously. "Is that what you call abandoning your wife in her darkest hour? Humiliating her in front of 200 people? Letting your mother destroy her spirit?" The conversation was drawing attention. Other guests pretended to mingle while straining to hear every word of the confrontation that would be gossip gold for months to come. I was pressured by family," Delhi whispered, his usual arrogance completely deflated. "My mother expected." "Your mother expected you to be a man," Kwame cut him off. "Instead, she got a coward who threw away the best thing that ever happened to him." The words hit their target with devastating accuracy. Delhi's hands were shaking now, his expensive suit feeling like a costume that no longer fit. But Kwame wasn't finished. His final words would change everything. "I hope you enjoyed running your family's oil business, Delhi. Because after tonight, that's going to become much more challenging." What do you think Kwame means by that threat? Comment your thoughts on the betrayal, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories. The next morning brought chaos to the Adebayo household in ways Delhi could never have anticipated. His phone had been ringing nonstop since 6 a.m., and each call brought worse news than the last. "Sir, we have a problem," his operations manager, Emeka, said breathlessly over the phone. 3 of our biggest international clients have called emergency meetings. They're asking questions about our corporate values and family treatment policies. Deli's coffee mug slipped from his trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor of his Ikoyi mansion. Funmi looked up from feeding their 5-year-old son, her face creased with worry. What kind of questions? Deli demanded, though he already suspected the answer. They want to know about your divorce, sir. Specifically, they're asking whether the rumors about how you treated your first wife are true. Apparently, there are videos from last night's gala circulating on social media. Deli's blood went cold. In today's connected world, reputation traveled faster than lightning, and social media had become the court of public opinion. He grabbed his tablet and frantically searched for his name. The first video that appeared made his stomach drop. It was Kemi, Adunni's 8-year-old daughter, speaking to a reporter with the poise of someone 3 times her age. "My mummy is the strongest person I know," the little girl said, her voice clear and confident. "She told us that sometimes people say mean things when they're scared, but love always wins in the end." She said the man who used to be married to her forgot that families are supposed to stick together no matter what. The video had already garnered 2 million views and thousands of comments, most of them praising Adunni's grace and condemning Deli's past behavior. Worse still, business journalists had picked up the story, turning his personal life into a case study about corporate leadership and character. Meanwhile, across town in her suite at the 4 Points Hotel, Adunni was having a very different kind of morning. She sat on the balcony overlooking Lagos Lagoon, watching her children play while she reviewed reports from her London office. "Mummy, can we go see Grandma Folklore today?" Tund asked, referring to Adunni's mother who still lived in their old family home in Ikeja. "Of course, my love," Adunni replied, though her mind was focused on the phone call she'd just finished with her publicist in London. The strategy they'd crafted over months was working perfectly. Kwame emerged from the bedroom, his phone pressed to his ear as he conducted business with his Hong Kong office. Even at 7 in the morning, he commanded attention and respect from global investors worth billions. "The Lagos expansion is proceeding ahead of schedule," he told his caller. "But we'll need to be very selective about our local partnerships. Character matters more than connections in this market." When he hung up, Adunni gave him a knowing look. "How many calls have you received about the Adebayo Group this morning?" 7, Kwame replied with a satisfied smile. "And it's not even 8 o'clock yet." Their plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than seeking direct revenge against Deli, they were letting market forces and social pressure do the work for them. In the age of social media and corporate social responsibility, a company's values mattered as much as its profits. The first major blow came at 10 a.m. when Zenith Bank announced they were reviewing all their partnerships with companies that didn't align with their values of family support and gender equality. The Adebayo Group had a 200 million naira credit facility with Zenith. The second blow landed an hour later when Chief Mrs. Adebayo received a call that would change everything. It was from her own sister, Mama Folklore, who had maintained a close relationship with Adunni's family even after the divorce. "Sister, you need to fix what your son did to that girl." Mama Folek's voice carried the authority of an elder who had seen enough of life to know right from wrong. "That woman has become somebody important, and your family's name is being dragged through the mud because of how you treated her. But she couldn't give us grandchildren." Mama Adebayo protested, her voice rising with familiar indignation. "Open your eyes, sister. She has 3 beautiful children now. The problem was never with her. It was with your son's weak character." The conversation ended with Mama Folklore delivering an ultimatum that sent shockwaves through the Adebayo household. "Make this right, or I'll tell everyone in this family exactly what kind of man your son really is." By noon, Deli was facing the collapse of everything he'd built his identity around. His mother was hysterical, his wife was questioning their marriage, and his business was hemorrhaging credibility by the hour. But the worst was yet to come. His secretary buzzed the intercom with news that would bring him to his knees. "Sir, Mrs. Adunni Bakare is here to see you. She says she has a business proposition." The woman he destroyed 10 years ago was standing in his office lobby, and this time she held all the cards. Will Deli face Adunni and finally answer for his betrayal? Hit that like button and let me know what you think should happen next. Adunni walked into Deli's corner office like she owned the building, her red business suit tailored to perfection, and her confidence radiating from every step. The same room where she'd once begged him to fight for their marriage now seemed smaller, diminished by her commanding presence. Deli stood behind his mahogany desk, his usually perfect posture betraying the weight of the crisis crushing down on him. His hand shook slightly as he gestured toward the leather chairs where they'd shared so many dreams in the early days of their marriage. "Adunni," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You look incredible." "I didn't come here for compliments, Deli," she replied coolly, settling into the chair with the grace of a queen holding court. "I came to discuss business." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. 10 years ago, she'd sat in this same chair as his wife, pleading with him to stand up to his mother's demands for a second wife. Now she sat as a successful entrepreneur whose single decision could destroy his empire. "Your company is hemorrhaging contracts," Adunni continued, pulling out a tablet and scrolling through financial reports. "Zenith Bank froze your credit line this morning. Shell is reconsidering their partnership. Your stock price has dropped 15% since yesterday." Deli's throat felt like sandpaper. "What do you want from me?" For the first time since entering the office, Adunni's composure cracked slightly. A flash of the old pain crossed her features before she steeled herself again. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything because of someone else's choices," she said quietly. "I want you to know what it's like to have your worth questioned, your future destroyed, your dreams dismissed." "Adunni, please." Deli moved around the desk, desperation making him bold. "I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. But this destroying my business, it won't change what happened." "You're right." She stood up, her height seeming to tower over him despite being several inches shorter. "It won't change what happened. But it might prevent you from doing it to someone else." The door opened without warning, and Mama Adebayo burst in, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled from stress. Behind her trailed Funmi, whose eyes were red from crying. "Adunni, my daughter," Mama Adebayo began, her voice taking on a tone she'd never used with her former daughter-in-law. "Please, we need to talk. This has gone too far." The sight of a woman who had orchestrated her humiliation now begging for mercy filled Adunni with a mixture of satisfaction and disgust. But it was Funmi's presence that truly surprised her. "I need to know the truth," Funmi said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About what really happened between you and Deli. About why you left." Adunni studied the younger woman who had taken her place. Funmi was beautiful in a conventional way, but there was a brittleness to her that suggested years of trying to live up to impossible expectations. "The truth." Adunni's laugh held no humor. "The truth is that your husband abandoned me when I needed him most. The truth is that his mother stood up at our anniversary party and announced that I was defective, that I needed to be replaced like a broken appliance." Funmi's face went white. "They told me you left because you couldn't handle the pressure of marriage." "No." Adunni's voice grew stronger with each word. "I left because I refused to accept being treated as less than human. I left because I knew my worth, even when everyone else had forgotten it." Mama Adebayo stepped forward, her pride finally crumbling under the weight of consequences. "We were wrong, Adunni. I was wrong. I let tradition and pressure cloud my judgment about who you really were." "And what am I, Mama?" Adunni asked, using the title with deliberate irony. "What am I really?" "You're a woman of strength and dignity who deserved better than what we gave you," the older woman admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're a mother who raised 3 beautiful children while building an empire. You're everything I should have seen the first time." The admission hung in the air like a sacred confession, but Adunni wasn't finished. "I want something from each of you," she announced, her voice cutting through their emotional display like a sword. "Something that will determine whether this company survives or dies." Deli, Funmi, and his mother looked at her with desperate attention. "I want public acknowledgement of what happened. I want the real story told, not the sanitized version you've been spreading for 10 years. And I want," She paused, her next demand hanging in the balance. I want Delhi to experience exactly what I experienced. Complete humiliation in front of everyone who matters to him. The room fell silent as the true scope of her revenge became clear. What devastating humiliation does Adunni have planned? Don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell. The plan Adunni unveiled left everyone in the room speechless. She wanted Delhi to hold a press conference admitting to his failures as a husband, followed by a public apology at the very same venue where she'd been humiliated, the Lagos Country Club where their anniversary disaster had unfolded 10 years ago. You want me to destroy my own reputation, Delhi said, his voice hollow with disbelief. Your reputation destroyed itself the moment you chose cowardice over character, Adunni replied. I'm simply giving you the chance to rebuild it on a foundation of truth instead of lies. Mama Adebayo clutched her chest dramatically. This will ruin our family's standing in society. Everything we've worked for. Everything you stole from me, Adunni corrected. My dignity, my self-worth, my place in this community. Now you'll understand what it costs. Funmi, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke up. What about me? What about our children? They don't deserve to suffer for his mistakes. For the first time since entering the office, Adunni's expression softened slightly. She recognized the fear in Funmi's eyes, the same fear she'd felt when her own world was crumbling. Your children will be protected, Adunni assured her. This isn't about innocent people paying for their father's sins. It's about accountability. The negotiations continued for 2 hours, with Delhi's lawyers joining via conference call to discuss the legal implications. The media strategy would be carefully orchestrated. First a press conference, then the public apology, and finally a documentary-style interview where Delhi would detail his failures as a husband and the lessons he'd learned. But Adunni saved her biggest surprise for last. There's one more thing, she announced as they were finalizing the agreement. I want you to understand what real fatherhood looks like. She pulled up a video on her tablet, footage of Kwame teaching her sons to play football in Hyde Park, then helping Kemi with her mathematics homework, then all 4 of them cooking dinner together in their London home. This is what you threw away, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Not just me, but the family we could have built together. The love, the support, the partnership. Delhi watched the video with tears streaming down his face. He could see the pure joy on the children's faces, the natural way they interacted with Kwame, the obvious love and respect that flowed between all of them. They call him Papa Kwame, Adunni continued. He's never missed a school play, a football match, or a bedtime story. He loves them not because they carry his DNA, but because they carry pieces of my heart. The contrast with his own children was devastating. His son barely looked up from his video games when Delhi came home, and his daughter seemed more comfortable with their nanny than with either parent. I can change, Delhi whispered desperately. I can be better. Give me a chance to prove. You had your chance, Adunni cut him off. You had a woman who loved you unconditionally, who was willing to fight the world alongside you. Instead, you joined the world in fighting against her. The meeting concluded with signed agreements and scheduled press conferences. As Adunni prepared to leave, she turned back one final time. The children are my miracle, Delhi. But the real miracle was learning that I never needed your family's approval to know my own worth. Outside the building, Kwame was waiting with the children in his Range Rover. Kemi immediately hugged her mother. How did it go, Mummy? Justice takes time, baby girl, Adunni replied, settling into the passenger seat. But it always comes. As they drove away, Delhi watched from his office window. The woman he discarded as worthless was now worth more than he could ever hope to be, and he'd traded his chance at real happiness for his family's toxic expectations. The press conference was scheduled for the next day, but that night brought news that would change everything once again. Kwame received a phone call that made him go pale, his usually steady hands shaking as he hung up. What is it? Adunni asked, immediately sensing something was wrong. There's been an accident, he said quietly. My business partner in Accra. He's been embezzling money. Millions of dollars. The authorities want to question me tomorrow. Adunni felt her perfect revenge plan crashing down around her. If Kwame was implicated in a financial scandal, everything they'd built could be destroyed. What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? Share this story with someone who loves a good plot twist and comment below. Are you Team Adunni, or do you think she's gone too far? The emergency meeting in Kwame's hotel suite felt like a war room as lawyers, accountants, and crisis management specialists worked through the night. Adunni sat in the center of the chaos, her mind racing through possibilities while her children slept peacefully in the adjoining room, unaware that their world might be about to crumble. The good news is that all of Kwame's transactions were properly documented, his lead attorney, Barrister Chinua Okafor, explained. The bad news is that public perception doesn't always align with legal reality. Kwame paced the length of the suite, his usually calm demeanor cracked under pressure. 20 years of building this company, and Marcus decides to steal from our clients. 20 years. Adunni watched her fiancé struggle with betrayal from someone he'd trusted like a brother. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd brought Kwame to Lagos to witness Delhi's reckoning, only to face their own crisis. We need to get ahead of this story, the publicist, Sarah Martinez, advised. If the media connects this scandal to your presence in Lagos, to the whole situation with your ex-husband, it could look like I'm a gold digger who chose another man who might be a criminal. Adunni finished the thought that no one else wanted to voice. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Karma is a beautiful thing. A friend. She didn't need to guess who had sent it. Delhi or his mother had somehow learned about Kwame's troubles and were already planning their counterattack. By morning, the situation had escalated beyond their worst fears. The Financial Crime Unit had frozen several of Asante Technologies' accounts pending their investigation, and business journalists were already connecting dots between Kwame's legal troubles and his high-profile appearance at Delhi's Gala. "Mummy, why does everyone look sad?" Kemi asked over breakfast, her perceptive eyes moving from adult to adult around the table. "Sometimes grown-ups have to solve very complicated puzzles, sweetheart," Adunni replied, forcing a smile. "But we always figure things out together." The irony of her situation was becoming clearer by the hour. She'd returned to Lagos as a conquering hero, ready to exact justice on the man who'd wronged her. Now she faced the possibility of being exposed as a woman who'd aligned herself with another questionable man. At 10 a.m., her phone rang. It was Delhi. Adunni, his voice carried a note she'd never heard before. Genuine concern mixed with something that might have been compassion. "I heard about Kwame's troubles. Are you all right?" The question caught her off guard. After everything that had happened between them, after all the years of bitterness and the elaborate revenge she'd orchestrated, he was asking about her well-being. "Why do you care?" she asked, genuinely confused. "Because despite everything that's happened between us, despite all the mistakes I've made, I never stopped caring about you," Delhi admitted. "And because those children don't deserve to suffer for adult mistakes." His words hit her like a physical blow. She'd spent 10 years painting him as a monster in her mind, but the man on the phone sounded like the boy she'd fallen in love with in university. Vulnerable, concerned, human. "What do you want, Delhi?" "I want to help," he said simply. "My connections, my lawyers, my resources. Whatever you need to clear Kwame's name and protect your family." Adunni's hand tightened around the phone. "And in exchange?" "No exchange. No conditions. Just let me do one thing right in this whole mess." Before she could respond, Kwame appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "Adunni, we need to talk. Alone." She ended the call with Delhi and followed Kwame to the bedroom, her heart pounding with dread at what new disaster he might reveal. "There's something I haven't told you," Kwame began, his voice heavy with shame. "About Marcus, about the money he stole. Some of it was supposed to be for your children's trust funds." The confession hit her like a sledgehammer. The money she'd planned to secure her children's futures had been stolen by the man she trusted to help build their dreams. "How much?" she whispered. £2 million. Their entire educational fund. Adunni sank onto the bed, the weight of everything crushing down on her. She'd left London with such confidence, so certain that she was in control of her destiny. Now she faced the possibility of losing everything again, not just her money, but her reputation, her children's security, and perhaps even Kwame himself. But as she sat there processing the devastating news, her phone buzzed with another message. This one was from FundMe. Whatever happened between you and my husband, you don't deserve this. Let us help. The offer of assistance from the woman who'd taken her place was the last thing Adunni had expected, but it sparked something inside her, a reminder of who she'd become during her years of rebuilding. She'd survived abandonment, humiliation, and poverty before. She could survive this too. But first, she had to make an impossible choice: accept help from a man who destroyed her, or face the collapse of everything she'd built alone. The decision would determine not just her future, but the kind of person she chose to become in her darkest hour. Can Adunni swallow her pride to save her family? Hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you would do in her situation. The Lagos Federal High Court buzzed with media attention as Kwame's preliminary hearing began. Adunni sat in the gallery, her children beside her, trying to project calm while her world threatened to unravel. She'd made her choice. She would accept help from unexpected sources, including Delhi. All rise for the Honorable Justice Adebayo, the court clerk announced, and Adunni's heart skipped when she realized the presiding judge shared her ex-husband's surname. Justice Folake Adebayo was a woman in her 50s, known throughout Lagos legal circles for her integrity and no-nonsense approach to financial crimes. As she reviewed the case files, Adunni noticed the way the judge's eyes lingered on Kwame, with what appeared to be recognition. Mr. Santi, Justice Adebayo began, you stand accused of conspiracy to commit financial fraud through your partnership with Marcus Osei. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor, Kwame replied, his voice steady despite the circumstances. The prosecution presented their case with devastating efficiency. Bank records showed suspicious transfers, offshore accounts that couldn't be explained, and a paper trail that seemed to implicate Kwame in Marcus's embezzlement scheme. With each piece of evidence, Adunni watched her fiancé's reputation crumble in real time. But then Delhi's lawyer, Senior Advocate Mohammed Bello, stood to address the court. Your Honor, we represent interested parties who wish to provide crucial evidence in this matter, Bello announced. Evidence that will completely exonerate the defendant. The prosecution objected, but Justice Adebayo allowed the submission. What followed was a masterclass in legal strategy that Adunni never could have anticipated. Delhi's team had worked through the night, using their oil company's forensic accounting department and international connections to trace the real flow of stolen money. They'd uncovered evidence that Marcus had been forging Kwame's digital signatures and manipulating blockchain records to make legitimate transactions appear fraudulent. The evidence shows that Mr. Sani was not only innocent of these crimes, but was himself a victim of sophisticated identity theft, Bello explained to the court. His business partner used advanced technology to make it appear that Mr. Asante had authorized transactions he never knew existed. As the defense presentation continued, Adunni found herself studying Delhi across the courtroom. The man who had once abandoned her in her time of need was now mobilizing every resource at his disposal to save her family. The irony was almost overwhelming. During a recess, she approached him in the corridor. Why are you doing this? She asked directly. Delhi looked older than his years, the stress of recent events having carved new lines around his eyes. Because I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. Because those children deserve better than what I gave you. And because... He paused, struggling with words that had taken him a decade to find. Because I loved you, Adunni. I loved you, and I let fear make me weak. I can't undo that, but I can try to make sure you never suffer for another man's weakness again. The admission hung between them like a bridge across 10 years of pain and misunderstanding. Delhi, she began, but was interrupted by young Tun tugging at her dress. Mummy, is Papa Kwame going to jail? Her son asked with the directness that only children possess. Before she could answer, Delhi knelt down to the boy's eye level. No, little man, he said gently. Papa Kwame is innocent, and we're going to prove it. Sometimes good people get accused of bad things, but the truth always comes out in the end. Tun studied Delhi with the intense concentration of a 6-year-old trying to understand adult complexities. Are you the man who made my mummy sad before I was born? The question hit Deli like a physical blow, but he didn't flinch from the child's innocent directness. Yes, he admitted quietly. I made some very bad choices that hurt your mummy very much. I'm trying to do better now. Mummy says everyone deserves a second chance if they're really sorry, Tun replied with the wisdom that sometimes comes from mouths of babes. When court resumed, the tide had completely turned. Not only was Kwame cleared of all charges, but Justice Adebayo announced that Marcus Osei had been arrested in Accra attempting to flee to Dubai with over $50 million in stolen funds. As they left the courthouse, Kwame pulled Adunni aside. I know what Deli did for us, he said quietly. I know what it cost him to help the woman who was destroying his reputation. What are you saying? Adunni asked, though she suspected she knew. I'm saying that maybe your ex-husband isn't the monster you thought he was. And maybe this whole situation has taught all of us something about forgiveness. That evening, as they celebrated Kwame's vindication at a quiet dinner, Adunni received a text that would change everything once again. It was from an investigative journalist. I have information about your fertility treatments that will interest you. Call me tonight. The message suggested that there were still secrets from her past that hadn't been revealed. Secrets that could change everything she thought she knew about her own story. What shocking revelation from Adunni's past is about to surface? Don't miss the explosive next chapter. Like and subscribe for more incredible drama. The investigative journalist, Kemi Adesanya from Channels Television, met Adunni at the Intercontinental Hotel's quiet lounge. The woman's serious expression and the thick file she carried suggested this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Mrs. Becker, Kemi began, her voice professional but gentle, what I'm about to tell you may be difficult to hear, but you deserve to know the truth about your fertility treatments. Adunni's hands tightened around her coffee cup. What kind of truth? Kemi opened her file and pulled out medical documents, laboratory reports, and what appeared to be financial records. I've been investigating Dr. Sarah Okafor's London clinic for the past 6 months. There are irregularities in many of her cases, including yours. The journalist explained that Dr. Okafor had been performing unnecessary procedures on women whose fertility issues were actually treatable through simpler, less expensive methods. In some cases, she'd even lied about the severity of patients' conditions to justify costly treatments. Your blocked fallopian tubes, Kemi continued, were never as severe as you were told. According to these independent medical reviews, a simple outpatient procedure could have corrected the problem. You never needed the extensive treatments you underwent. Adunni felt the room spinning around her. Are you telling me that I could have had children with Deli? I'm telling you that if you'd received proper treatment 10 years ago, yes, natural conception would have been entirely possible. The revelation hit her like a tsunami. Everything she'd built her new identity around, the miraculous fertility treatments, the struggle to prove her worth, the entire narrative of her resurrection, was based on a lie told by a doctor who'd profited from her desperation. There's more, Kemi added reluctantly. Dr. Okafor has been arrested. 23 women have come forward with similar stories. The investigation suggests she deliberately misdiagnosed patients to increase her profits. Adunni excused herself and rushed to the ladies' room, where she barely made it to a stall before being violently sick. The woman she trusted to give her children had been a fraud. The medical miracle she'd celebrated for years had been unnecessary exploitation. Her phone buzzed with a call from Kwame, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. How could she explain that their entire relationship was built on a foundation of lies? That the children she'd presented as her triumph over impossible odds were actually proof of her own gullibility? When she returned to the lounge, Kemi was waiting with a sympathetic expression. I know this is overwhelming, the journalist said, but there's something else you should know. We have evidence that someone in Lagos was working with Dr. Okafor. What do you mean? Someone was paying her to ensure you never discovered the truth about your condition. Someone who benefited from you believing you were infertile. Adunni's blood went cold. Who? Kemi pulled out a bank transfer record that made Adunni's world tilt on its axis. The payment had come from a Lagos account belonging to Mama Adebayo. Your former mother-in-law has been paying Dr. Okafor for 10 years to keep your medical records sealed and to never contact you about the misdiagnosis. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that Adunni couldn't process it initially. Mama Adebayo hadn't just humiliated her publicly. She conspired to ensure that Adunni would never learn she could have been treated successfully. She knew, Adunni whispered. She knew I wasn't really infertile, and she let me suffer anyway. It appears she wanted to ensure you never returned to challenge the family's narrative, Kemi explained. As long as you believed you were damaged goods, you'd never come back to reclaim your place. Adunni left the hotel in a daze, her mind reeling from revelations that changed everything she thought she knew about her own story. When she reached her hotel suite, she found Kwame waiting with the children, all of them concerned about her pale complexion and obvious distress. "Mummy, are you sick?" Kemi asked, her 8-year-old intuition picking up on her mother's emotional turmoil. "No, baby," Adunni managed. "Mummy just learned some things that made her very sad." Kwame sent the children to their room to watch television, then sat beside Adunni on the couch. "What happened at that meeting?" he asked gently. Adunni told him everything, Dr. Okafor's fraud, the unnecessary treatments, and most devastating of all, Mama Adebayo's decade-long conspiracy to keep her in the dark. "So you could have had children with Delhi," Kwame said quietly when she finished. "Yes. If I'd received proper treatment instead of being manipulated by a criminal doctor paid by his mother to keep me ignorant." Kwame was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. "What are you going to do?" Before Adunni could answer, there was a knock at the door. Hotel security announced that Delhi was downstairs, asking to see her urgently. "He says it's about his mother," the security guard explained. "He says she's confessed something you need to hear." Adunni looked at Kwame, then at her children playing innocently in the next room. The web of lies and betrayal had become so complex that she wasn't sure who to trust anymore. But she knew she had to face whatever truth Delhi was bringing to her door. Send him up, she decided. The final confrontation was about to begin. What explosive confession is Delhi bringing? This story just keeps getting crazier. Hit that notification bell and tell me in the comments, who do you think is the real villain here? Delhi entered the hotel suite looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 hours. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his eyes held the haunted look of someone whose entire worldview had just collapsed. "Adunni," he began, his voice breaking. "My mother, she told me everything." Kwame stood protectively near Adunni, while the children watched from the doorway with wide, curious eyes. The adults' tension was palpable, and even young Tund seemed to sense that something momentous was happening. "She's been lying to me for 10 years, Delhi continued, sinking into a chair as if his legs could no longer support him. "About your fertility, about the divorce, about everything. She paid that doctor to lie to you, to keep you from getting proper treatment." "I know," Adunni said quietly. "A journalist just told me." Delhi's face crumpled. "She destroyed our marriage deliberately. She knew you could be treated, knew you could give us children, but she wanted you gone anyway. She said she never thought you were good enough for our family, that the fertility issue was just a convenient excuse." The admission hung in the air like poison. Mama Adebayo's betrayal hadn't just been about grandchildren. It had been about class, about control, about a mother-in-law who couldn't bear to share her son with a woman she deemed inferior. "Where is she now?" Adunni asked. "At home, packing. She's planning to leave Lagos tonight. She knows that when this story breaks, she'll be destroyed socially and probably face criminal charges for fraud conspiracy." Adunni felt a cold satisfaction at the thought of the woman who'd orchestrated her humiliation now fleeing in shame. But beneath that satisfaction was a deeper pain, the recognition of how much had been stolen from all of them. "Delhi," she said finally, "do you understand what she took from us? Not just our marriage, but years of happiness, the family we could have built together, the trust we could have shared." "I know," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "And I know I was complicit in it. I was weak, I was a coward, and I let her destroy the best thing in my life because I was too scared to stand up to her." Kwame had been listening in silence, but now he spoke up. "What matters now is what we do with the truth." All eyes turned to him, surprised by his calm tone in the midst of such emotional chaos. "Adunni," Kwame continued, "you have a choice to make. You can let this bitterness consume the next 10 years of your life, or you can choose to build something better from what's left." 8-year-old Kemi stepped forward from the doorway. "Mummy, is this the man who made you sad?" Adunni nodded, unable to trust her voice. "But he helped Papa Kwame when the police were being mean to him," Kemi observed with the clarity that only children possess. "Maybe he's not all bad." The wisdom from her daughter's mouth struck Adunni like lightning. In her quest for revenge, she'd forgotten the lesson she taught her children about second chances and forgiveness. "Deli," she said slowly, "I need you to understand something. I don't forgive you because you deserve it. I forgive you because I deserve peace." Deli looked up at her with desperate hope. "Does that mean?" "It means we all need to learn how to move forward," Adunni interrupted. "Your mother will face the consequences of her actions. The truth will come out, and justice will be served. But I won't let her poison claim any more of my life." Over the next hour, they talked, really talked, for the first time in 10 years. Deli apologized not just for abandoning her, but for being too weak to recognize her worth. Adunni acknowledged that while she couldn't change the past, she could choose how to shape the future. "I want you to know," Deli said as the conversation wound down, "that I've learned what real love looks like by watching Kwame with you and the children. He's the man I should have been." Kwame, who had been quietly observing the exchange, finally spoke. "Love isn't about being perfect, Deli. It's about choosing to stand by someone when things get difficult. You have a chance to learn that now with your own family." 6 months later, the story had become Lagos legend. Mama Adebayo fled to London, but was extradited to face fraud charges. Dr. Okafor received a 10-year prison sentence and was ordered to pay restitution to her victims. The scandal made international headlines as a cautionary tale about medical fraud and family manipulation. Adunni and Kwame's wedding took place at the Tafawa Balewa Square, with 300 guests celebrating not just their love, but the triumph of truth over deception. Deli attended with Funmi and their children, no longer as an enemy, but as someone trying to rebuild his life on a foundation of honesty. In her wedding speech, Adunni said something that would be quoted in newspapers across Africa. "Sometimes the people who try to break us end up teaching us how strong we really are. My journey taught me that worth isn't determined by what others think of you. It's determined by what you think of yourself." As she danced with Kwame while her children played nearby, Adunni reflected on the unexpected turns her life had taken. She'd returned to Lagos seeking revenge, but found something better: the peace that comes from letting go of bitterness and choosing love over hate. The little girl who had once been dismissed as broken had become a woman who understood that true strength comes not from perfection, but from the courage to keep building beautiful things even after they've been torn down. Years later, when people asked her about her remarkable journey, Adunni would smile and say, "God's timing is always perfect. Sometimes what looks like an ending is really just the beginning of something better." And in the end, that truth proved more powerful than any revenge she could have planned. What an incredible journey! Did Adunni make the right choice forgiving Deli? Comment below with your thoughts on this amazing story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimate redemption. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Tales by Ben, and share this powerful story with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know. What story should we tell next? Let me know in the comments.